All right, next game we're talking about another close call for a top 5 team. That is Texas beating number 25 Vanderbilt 27-24. Let's go over the highest graded players from the Longhorn victory. Starting off with Alfred Collins with an 83.6 grade, Baron Sorrell with a 73.9 grade, Michael Taffy with a 73.8 grade, Jermaine Lole with a 73.5 grade, running back Travion Wisner with a 73.1, and then Quinn Ewers with a 78 grade. Really solid day for Quinn Ewers, the highest graded offensive player for the Longhorns. Go over to the Vanderbilt side with their highest graded players. Starting off with edge defender Corday Sidnor at a 77, Randon Fontenette, the corner, at a 75.5, Demarion Thomas with a 71.4, Martell Height at a 71.4 as well, DeRicky Wright, the safety, 70.7, and then Diego Pavia, the quarterback, at a 62.7 grade. Dalton, for you, what was the stat that told the story in this Texas victory?
So this game did end up a 3-point game, and obviously Vanderbilt's a dangerous opponent. They came in number 25 for a reason. They are a good football team. They're going to win more games this year. But I mentioned about how you just can't let Vanderbilt get in their wheelhouse, right, in the preview, right? Get into the run game and get two-dimensional and all that. I thought Texas run defense was spectacular in this game. An 85.9 team run defense grade. Vanderbilt, 26 design carries for just 91 yards and 6 first downs. They are built to be two-dimensional. They're built to run first. They've got all their wild concepts in their option game and everything Diego Pavia does in the run game, but they had to rely on Pavia a lot in the passing game, and obviously, look, he's been a really good passer this year, especially on late downs and everything we've talked about, but they're not designed to just drop back from behind and throw the football and not lean on this run game and not be two-dimensional. So the fact that Texas run D was so good in this game allowed them to get ahead, allowed them to find a rhythm. Vandy never got in their wheelhouse on offense. It happens, if they fall, especially when they fall behind, they're not going to be in it. It's very much like we would talk about, any team that's run heavy, right? When we've talked about Kansas State or we talk about an academy school or just any of those run heavy teams, it's hard for them to play from behind. Even with a guy as good as Diego Pavia, they don't have enough weapons on the outside to just drop back and throw the football all the time. So Texas run defense, their front seven, again, their defense has been performing all year. I think it's been the thing that will continue to keep them in a national title races. Even against Georgia, their defense wasn't that bad. They just had all the turnovers in their offense, put them in bad spots. I think this defense was spectacular in this game, especially in the front with their run defense. They did not let Vanderbilt get where they wanted to in the run game.
Definitely. And I want to go to the other side of the ball with Quinn Ewers, who really bounced back with a 78.7 passing grade in this win. It was on a scorching hot seat, right, man? He had a 30 passing grade against Georgia, 7 turnover-worthy plays against Georgia as well, which is easily the most of any Power 4 quarterback over the last 4 years. I got to look back even more. It might even be longer than that because it was originally 6, and then once we reviewed the game, it ended up being 7. Also, he had a 56.1 passing grade the week before against Oklahoma. So 78.7 after having 2 rough games against Georgia and Oklahoma. Really good bounce back for him. His best passing grade since week 1 against Colorado State. He was 27 for 37 for 288 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But those 2 interceptions were not turnover-worthy plays because both of them were tipped. So it was still, obviously 2 picks is not great, but no turnover-worthy plays. So no turnover plays in this game. He had 9 turnover-worthy plays in the last 2 games combined, honestly. So good day for Ewers. 80.6% adjusted completion rate. He didn't really push the ball downfield at all. He had an average at the target of 5.5 yards, but he still dinked and dunked to victory and just knew what he needed to do to get the win for Texas, honestly. Didn't force it or anything like that. And I think he staved off Arch Manning for at least another game with his performance. So really good bounce back win for Quinn Ewers after having 2 really rough showings, honestly.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's big to get it against a good opponent on the road. And Vanderbilt, look, at this time of year and the way the playoff race is, Vanderbilt's the type of team, especially if you're playing them in Nashville, just get out alive. I think that's where we're at right now. Vandy's, I think, pretty clearly one of the top probably 30 teams in the country. Their offense is really dangerous. Their defense, maybe not the most talented defense, but they fly around, they tackle well, they make plays, they force turnovers. Really. That's been the big thing, the big pick 6 against Bama, a couple turnovers in this game. Vandy's a dangerous opponent, and Texas and Quinn got through it. So I got to credit them. Vanderbilt, I got to be honest, it feels like they did it to Bama already. They're going to upend somebody else this season here. I don't know who it is. I don't know who in the rest of their schedule, but somebody's going to be real upset playing Vanderbilt in the next few weeks because this is still a really dangerous team. This was a fun game, and I think Texas's defense and Quinn Ewers responded the way they needed to just escape with a win. It's actually a much bigger win than we thought it would be coming into the season for sure.
They are at LSU on November 23rd. and then they host Tennessee. Eli's balls. Eli, you better be careful. You better be careful back there, Eli, with the
Vanderbilt's the type of team, and they already did it to Bama.
It's in Nashville, too.
They could upend somebody's season here. That's a dangerous team still. I thought, they battled in this game. They're going to battle for 60 minutes, and they did here. Again, only a 3-point loss to Texas. Well, I mean, still, even through a loss, what an incredible season they're having.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're at Auburn. They should win that game. They host South Carolina. Then they're at LSU, and they're host Tennessee to close out the year. So those last two are going to be interesting. They're going to be really interesting to watch those two right there. But, Dalton, for you talked about the run D already. There's one guy who really just dominated for Texas on that run D. So who was your most impressive part of this?
Yeah, it's their highest graded player, the defensive tackle, Alfred Collins, big number 95. Look, 6 tackles, couple of stops, couple of pressures, 87.5 run defense grade, Max. And he played 22 run defense snaps, 9 positive grades out of those 22, which is spectacular, and no negative grades. He is just so strong in there. A lot of times lined up right over the tackles at 5 technique. Really good at just doing the bench press technique, 2-gapping, keeping his head on a swivel, getting where he needs to go. He's a real problem. And I know last year he was thought of as kind of the third fiddle, right, behind Tavondre Sweat on Byron Murphy. He played really well in that role last year. Now he's taken on the lead role on this defensive line, especially against the run. Alfred Collins had just a spectacular game. Vanderbilt, they have great schemes, but their offensive line isn't great. Collins took over this game when he needed to in the run game. He was the biggest reason that it worked for them on defense, and he's having a great season, honestly. He is a terrific player, especially in the run game.
Yeah, a terrific defensive tackle, and I'm going to go with a terrific offensive tackle, Dalton. Kelvin Banks Jr. I mean, this guy is unreal. An 89 pass blocking grade, 0 sacks, 0 hits, 0 pressures allowed on 42 pass blocking snaps. Also, I mentioned before that beaten by defender stat where you can lose a rep and still not allow a pressure because the quarterback gets rid of the ball quickly. He was not beaten once on 42 pass blocking snaps. Also, last week against Georgia, so a lot of Texas offensive line got a lot of flack for how they performed last week, including Kelvin Banks Jr. He had an 82.9 grade in that game. He actually played really well in that game. And yes, there were a couple times where the guy he was blocking got the sack, but a couple of them were Quinn Ewers' fault. One of them, he ran into the defender. And the other one, he just dropped back so far that Kelvin Banks Jr. couldn't do anything about it, honestly. And you could even see after the play was over, Kelvin Banks looked at Quinn Ewers and put his hands up like, dude, what are you doing out here? He did let up 1 sack. One of them was the strip sack that Michael Williams had. So that was the one bad one. But other than that, those 2 pressures allowed against Georgia as well. So he had a good game against Georgia. A lot of the Texas problems in that game were on the other side of the offensive line. Cameron Williams did not have a good game against Georgia, but Kelvin Banks Jr. has been locked down all year. Dawn, I'll say it right now, dude. He is OT1 in the NFL.
You're going there. You're going there.
I have been saying it for weeks now. I'm like, I think he's starting to take. No, he's OT1. He's OT1. He is balling this year. 91.5 pass blocking grade this year. That leads all tackles in America. 78.7 run blocking grade is 16th among all tackles in America. Will Campbell's been really good, and he's been really good his entire career, and he's still going to be a top 10 pick. I personally, after having Will Campbell as OT1 going into the year, I cannot ignore how dominant Kelvin Banks Jr. has been against some really, really good competition. He played Michigan as well and Georgia. And, I mean, I know Vanderbilt doesn't have great defense, but he was lights out in this game as well. He is the best offensive tackle in the NFL draft this year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I could see the argument, absolutely. And Campbell's smooth, and he's going to be a good player, too. But we've seen a couple of times when they play the better defensive lines, and they played South Carolina. LSU kind of struggled up front. They struggled up front against Texas A&M, especially in the run game. I could see the argument. Kelvin Banks, what a year he's having. I mean, these Texas quarterbacks, they got to feel pretty good with him protecting that blind side.
Absolutely. So he was really outstanding, and credit to Vanderbilt once again for almost pulling off another top 5 upset at home. Just came up short though with a 3-point loss to Texas.